Joining us here in studio with more on the Republican reaction to President's speeches, Congressman James Comer of Kentucky. He's chair of the House Oversight and Accountability Committee. Congressman, nice to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the studio.
Great to be here.
Yeah. So let's just start off and set the table with this. What did you think of the speech? What were your biggest takeaways?
Well, I liked hearing the president say he wanted to work with Republicans. I mean, that's an obvious. If he wants to govern, the House is ruled by a Republican majority. And look, we welcome the opportunity to work with President Biden. I think there are areas where we can find bipartisan agreement. There are areas where we have to find bipartisan agreement. So hopefully he's sincere to his words, and we can work together and try to find common ground.
Let's go to a couple of them. Police reform. I think last year he had a specific ask, pass the George Floyd Act. He didn't do that this year. He seemed to acknowledge, hey, let's do something. What's the something? What do you think can be agreed to? Where are you at in that?
Well, I think we need more transparency. I'm always for reform. I think that in any profession, there are bad actors. There are certainly bad cops, and I think they need to be held accountable. One of the problems that I've heard from different people involved in municipalities is obviously there's a shortage of police, and police move around a lot, and there's often not a record of police officers who have reputations of using excessive force.
Would you be in favor of a national database on this? That was
on a database? Yeah, I think that we need to share information better. So obviously that's a problem. We see that time and time again.
That'd be a big step. I mean, look, I think people here are just like, that would be a big step. Not everybody in your party agrees with that.
A database for officers that use excessive force, right?
Absolutely.
Congressman, can you give us the reality check on police reform? Because after Uvalde, something small got done on gun reform legislation. Is this moment that kind of moment where something small can get done? And does it require Democrats to drop their calls for addressing qualified immunity?
For immigration?
No, for police reform.
For police reform? Yeah. I mean, I think if we want to have police reform, we have to look where there's bipartisan agreement, where we can actually make a difference. And certainly we need to have data on these police officers because there is a high turnover rate among police officers, and they do move around a lot. So we need to be able to share information better. We have tried to create a database to help with people that suffer from child abuse. I was a co-sponsor with Susan Bonamucci of one of those bills to be able to track people that have reputations of abusing children. And I think that could, we could have that same type of data for police officers that use excessive force.
Let's move to immigration because this was probably where he was lightest. He didn't offer a lot on this front. In our poll, the number one issue where you had majorities of Republicans, Democrats, and Independents saying was when we described, enhancing border security, paths to citizenship with background checks. Okay, that matters, including all that. But a comprehensive, that was the most popular thing. It had over 80% support, 60% of Republicans, 80% of Democrats. That seems very unrealistic, though, isn't it?
That's a tough issue when you talk about amnesty. Border security, I think if you just poll border security, I think there's overwhelming support for that. People realize that we have a crisis at the southern border. So there would certainly be bipartisan support to try to find a way to secure that border.
Pathway to citizenship is where things get trickier?
That's where things get tricky.
So you don't see anything getting done on immigration over the next 2 years?
I don't think amnesty's on the table for Republicans right now. I think that we've got to get serious about securing the border and then go from there.
Got to ask you a couple things about tonight and the sort of, and I know it's the sideshow part of things, but the Mitt Romney, George Santos confrontation, I don't know what you saw.
I think we have the video now. I think we can
wrap the video there, but you've now heard the reporting. What do you make of Congressman Santos's decision to sort of tweet about it and almost embrace it?
Right. Well, you asked me this on your Sunday show a few weeks ago, and I, certainly don't agree with George Santos. I think that he has made a lot of mistakes, and he will be held accountable if he violated campaign finance laws. Certainly, the fact that he showed up to the State of the Union was questionable, but sitting on the aisle to where he could get attention, I mean,
you found that to be distasteful.
Someone told me he was sitting on the aisle when I got there. I didn't see the conversation between he and Mitt Romney, but the fact that he was wanting to be in the center of the limelight, it just makes no sense.
Do you agree with what Mitt Romney said to him? He said, you have no business being here.
Well, I think that he has a lot of explaining to do. He's certainly under several investigations right now. He's under ethics investigation. He's under campaign finance violation investigation. So obviously he deserves due process, but he's got
Sounds like
a
he's
long
really
way to go.
testing the limits of a lot of your cases.
He's
Yeah.
crossed the line,
Yeah.
obviously, and he certainly doesn't speak for the Republican Party, and we're very disappointed in Santos.
I want to ask you about another big moment tonight when President Biden said some Republicans, he said, I'm not talking about all of you, but some Republicans want to cut Social Security and Medicare. And it led to this very robust exchange. It's getting a lot of attention online. What did you make of that moment? And would you support cuts to Medicare and Social Security as a part of increasing the debt limit? That was
Absolutely not. We've said that's off the board. I mean, that is something that every Republican, to my knowledge, is united on. I don't know where he's getting a Republican is in favor of cutting Social Security or Medicare, unless it's something Rick Scott proposed. I don't know if that's where he's getting that from. I don't know.
What'd you make of that moment, though, Congressman?
Well, I thought that was inappropriate. I don't think he should have said that. I mean, if you're sincere about working together, if he had evidence that House Republicans had proposed to cut Social Security, then he should have named them by name. Or maybe he can do that at a press conference tomorrow. No Republican wants to cut Social Security or Medicare. But in reality, there's problems long-term with Social Security and Medicare. And that's going to have to be a discussion, not for cuts, but there's going to have to be more money put into Social Security.
I was just going to say, I mean, because one person's cuts, another person's slowing the growth, right? And I've been through these debates for decades, and slowing the growth is not a cut, but to some people it comes across that way. What about slowing the growth?
We want to support Social Security and Medicare 100%. Even the former president has come out and publicly said that. He's always said that, former President Trump. So this is a important part of the Republican platform. We strongly support Social Security and Medicare, but we need to have
in the platform, right?
Well, I don't know. I've been in Congress 6 years. I've always supported Social Security and Medicare.
Fair enough. It's been about 6 years. I'll give you that.
Can we get your reaction to another flashpoint tonight? There were obviously a lot of outbursts. One of them that is getting a fair amount of attention, Marjorie Taylor Greene shouting liar, accusing the president of being a liar. You see her there. You see her, you can read her lips. Is that appropriate?
Well, certainly there should be some decorum. I know that there were outbursts during Trump's State of the Union. I wish that everyone would respect the decorum and let the president speak. We have outbursts in my oversight committee hearings, believe it or not. People are passionate. It's tough sometimes when you strongly disagree with what the president's saying, but certainly I wish we would adhere to decorum.
I know you're going to get into a lot of various investigations, and we're not going to get into the details of what you're doing tonight. But one thing that popped in our poll was there's a concern that the public is concerned that Republicans are going to be too focused on investigations and not enough working with the public. How sensitive are you to this and to that perception?
I'm sensitive to the fact that congressional investigations have a bad reputation. They have low credibility. I want to turn that around. We have announced one investigation of Joe Biden, and I don't want to get into that unless you want to get into that. I can talk about it all night.
I know we can, but
at the end of the day, Donald Trump was investigated multiple times by multiple committees over 6 years. He's still being investigated. There's a special counsel. So I believe we've laid the groundwork to why we feel like this president needs to be investigated. But we're focused on an agenda. We're focused on reducing crime. We're focused on securing the border. We're focused on reducing inflation. We're trying to make budget cuts. I mean, we can't continue down this path of spending $1 trillion a year more than we take in. So we're trying to make tough decisions that would benefit everyday working Americans.
Are you going to put out a cut plan, or is the movement going to be on debt ceiling, probably for spending caps? Is that what the Republican ask is going to be?
Well, we're still talking about that. Yeah. We're having robust discussions in our conference. I mean, I
imagine there's some disagreement because some want to go to individual cuts.
It's tough. One thing I've always felt like unites Democrats is spending money. It's easy when you spend, but when you have to make
taxes is easy on your side.
It's tough.
It's another version of spending money.
Congressman, very quickly before we let you go, your reaction to the response by Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who called the president unfit for office?
Well, there's certainly a lot of disagreement about the president's leadership on the foreign stage.
Does that take it too far, though, in a Republican response on a night like tonight? Is that the tone that you think Republicans
This is the reality we live in. for better or worse. I mean, there's passion expressed by leaders in both parties. I didn't feel like it was appropriate what President Biden said about Republicans cutting Social Security and Medicare, and probably not in the best interest for others to say hurtful things on the night when we need to be united. But at the end of the day, there's always going to be disagreement, and that's part of the process. It gets a little tougher every year, but at the end of the day, I think that there's a willingness among both parties to try to work together.
Congressman James Comer, thank you for coming in.
Thank you,
and sharing
Really
your perspective
appreciate
today.
it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.